In this video, I'll discuss things you should keep in mind when prioritizing your work. One of the great things about doing research is that you get to answer the questions that you think are important for the field and, frankly, questions that you think are interesting. The challenge, though, is that there are lots of questions. You have to learn how to prioritize. When you're first starting as a graduate student, the thing to keep in mind is that you're learning in order to eventually do things. Some strategies to keep in mind if you're early in your graduate student career is to look around and let others take the lead. What are folks who are more experienced than you doing? And learn from them. Learn how they're prioritizing. Learn how they think of questions and how they approach answering those questions. Learn what organizational systems they have. Take the opportunity to learn from everyone because everyone is differently productive and you find your own level of productivity based off of the habits that you set early in your career. Your contribution at the very beginning it's going to be incremental. You're not going to necessarily discover something big as a graduate student. Instead, you're contributing to lots of projects, and some of those contributions may seem minor, but remember, you're doing them in order so you can learn how to do them by yourself later. Take advantage of the notion that you can explore new ideas without a lot of risk. You're able to explore new ideas because you're not necessarily building up a research program from the ground up as a graduate student. Instead, you're plugging into a bunch of different ones. So this gives you the opportunity to plug into a project, contribute to it, but also explore what it's doing. And this lets you become exposed to new ways of thinking, new ways of doing. And that's something that's easier to do when you're new at it and becomes a little bit harder once you become a little bit more experienced and you have agendas that you need to attend to. Once you're more advanced, the script flips and you are doing in order to learn. You're becoming a full-fledged researcher that's independent. And what that means is that you get to ask questions that you're interested in answering and you know how to answer them. So then the priority shifts a little bit. What are the questions that you're interested in answering? Figure that out. You can revisit old ideas. Some ideas you may have had as a graduate student, or some ideas you may have had and you weren't quite sure how to begin to explore them, how to begin to answer those questions. But once you're more advanced, you can begin to prioritize things that you came up with, and you can begin to form a plan. That's actually what your dissertation is. It's a plan of action that answers questions that you think are important. Sometimes you have to say no. You can say no to a lot of different things. New projects, people wanting you to contribute to something, taking a course. But one of the first things that you should think about in terms of deciding whether or not to say no is to trust your gut. What does your gut tell you about this decision point? Some things that might contribute to you saying no is the project might be too removed from where you're headed. It might be really interesting, but if you walk in that direction or you do work in that direction, it's actually going to pull you away from the research that is more of a priority for you. Another reason you might say no is the people asking you might be a team that you don't want to work with. It's perfectly fine to say no when you don't want to work with someone. Never feel coerced into having to work with a team because it'll always be an experience that you don't enjoy. Even if the work is good, if the team dynamics are toxic, then you'll find yourself not even liking the work. So keep in mind who's asking, and sometimes it's perfectly fine to say no to them. Another reason to say no is you might be overloaded. You might have said yes to too many things, and that means that you have no capacity, you have less bandwidth. Now, it's important to understand that early on, you don't have that much bandwidth. But as you get more experienced in doing independent research, you'll find that your bandwidth increases. You can actually take on more projects because you're just faster and more efficient. What about saying yes? Sometimes you actually do want to do things, so you say yes to things. If you're not quite sure, try it on for size. Play out in your mind what it might look like to do this. What's the final product? Put that product in your CV or in your resume or wherever and see if it's coherent with everything else that's there. You'll find that things that don't fit, things that don't align, are pretty obvious once you do that. Sometimes you say yes to a project because it's pragmatic. You want to work with the people who are asking you. And the project might not be a perfect fit, but it might be close enough where you can actually still get something out of it. And you get to also work with a great team of people who are asking you. So be pragmatic. Similarly, the project might actually not be super interesting or might not align with your research agenda, but the process of completing it will teach you something new. Maybe you get to work with data that's similar to data you want to collect. Maybe you use methods that you'll end up using later. So think pragmatically about the methods and things that you might learn by saying yes to the project. What are some ways that you prioritize? Share them in the comments below.